Welcome to Engineer Your Space. I'm Isabelle LaRue, your host. In today's episode, I'm in my living room. Now, it's been a real challenge to get enough light in here because there's no overhead lighting. So being a renter on a budget, I decided to get creative and I designed these beautiful wall sconces that you can customize with different shades and you can install directly on a wall or a wall panel to hide the cord. No electrician needed. They add just the right amount of lighting in here and a little bit of style too. And you'll see they're really easy to make. The wall sconces that I'm making are built in two parts. One is the shades, and I'm actually going to show you how to make both of these shades. And the second part is the base here. Now, because the base is the same for both of these, I'm actually going to show you how to make that first. Now, the first thing you'll need is a candelabra light kit like this one. It just has a smaller socket than your typical lamp kit. You can get this at Home Depot for about $6. And I really only recommend using LED light bulbs for this project. They hardly give off any heat and they don't consume a lot of energy, so that's a win-win. Now you'll also need a 12 by 12 inch aluminum sheet like this one. I got this at Home Depot as well. It was about $7. And if you've seen some of my other episodes, you know that I'm a big fan of templates, and we're going to make one for this project too. It's just going to give us all the lines that we need to cut in the aluminum sheet. Your template should be a rectangle that's 7.5 inches wide by 8 5/8 of an inch high. Then you draw a 2.5 inch square centered along the bottom line. Then draw a 1.5 inch by 5/8 of an inch rectangle. Lastly, draw two lines that are 3/4 of an inch long, starting 1/2 inch from the bottom and centered. And don't worry, if you didn't get all the measurements down, this template is available on my website at engineeryourspace.com. Now I've put some restickable strips here on the back just to make it easier to take off after I'm done cutting. Now I'm going to be using metal snips to cut the sheet, and it's important to wear gloves to avoid getting nicked while cutting. These are straight pattern metal snips that I'm using. And you'll want to cut along the solid lines and around the perimeter of the template. Now that's it for the major cutting. Now for the orange lines here, we actually just want to pierce through the metal wide enough so that the legs of the lamp kit can go through. Now to do that, I'm going to use this chisel. It's a cold chisel that's made specifically for cutting metal. Now you'll want to put a piece of soft pine wood underneath your metal template. That'll allow the chisel to go through the metal and then through the wood. Now you'll also want to wear safety glasses while doing this. Keep going until the slots are wide enough for the legs to go through. Now the only thing we have left to do is to bend the pieces here along the dotted lines. And the first one we're going to do is the middle. That one actually comes out. But it's really easy to do by just bending it like this. And then just basically wiggling it back and forth like this, and it comes right off. Then all that's left is to bring up this piece 90 degrees. Take the template off, and we can put the light kit in. You might have to bend the legs a little to get them in, and then straighten everything up. And that's it for the base. We're going to come back to this when we put the whole lamp together. But first we need to make the shades. Click here if you want to skip ahead to the wood shade. The first thing you need to build your shade is the inside ring of an 8-inch embroidery hoop. Now you'll want to cut this in half, and the metal snips work really well for this. Now you can leave your hoops as is. I painted mine silver. You could also use rub and buff for this. Now the next thing you need to make your shade is poster board and some covering material. I'm using this panel material from IKEA. You could also use wallpaper or fabric, whatever you have on hand. Now to attach the poster board to the hoops, I'm just using some glue. Putting it on the edge here. Then I like to take a toothpick and just smooth out the glue a little bit. Then you want to line it up right to the edge. And I like to use binder clips to hold it together so that it stays nice and flush. And you just keep building it like that. Now if you were making 2 wall sconces, you could make a whole drum shade and then just cut it in half. Now because the panel material that I'm using here isn't very sturdy, I need to reinforce the edges. And I'm going to do that with some 1-inch grosgrain ribbon that I cut in half. And I'm going to attach it to my panel material using fusible tape. It will bond the ribbon and the panel material together when a hot iron is applied. Now the only other thing we're going to need to make our shade are 2 pieces of corner guard. This is actually something you can find at the hardware store, and it's really inexpensive. You get 4 feet for just about $2. Now you'll want to cut your pieces so that they fit right in between the embroidery hoops here. Now this is what will be used to connect the shade to the metal base with these holes here that I drilled about 1/2 inch from the top and bottom. And one last thing that we need to put the shade together are these long stem brads. Now I got these online and they come in many different colors to match whatever material that you're using. Now the first step to put the shade together is to tape the corner guard here to the shade using some duct tape. This is going to serve to also block out the light coming out from the sides of the shade. And you don't have to worry about this being pretty because you won't be able to see this when the shade is all put together. Next, you want to put the panel material here onto the shade, clipping it again with some binder clips, making sure it's nice and flush with the edge. It's just to hold it in place while we drill the holes for the brads. Now to mark the location of the brad, I like to first mark the location on painter's tape. That way it won't leave any residue on the panel material and you can reuse it later on the other side. You want the brads to be about 1/4 inch from the edge, 3/4 inch apart, starting 1/4 inch from the end. Then clamp the edge of the shade on a scrap piece of 2x1 or furring strip, drill the holes and insert the brads. Last, you want to cover up the brad legs with some duct tape or electrical tape. To put the shade together, slide the base into the shade and mark the location of the holes of the corner guards. You want to remove the base and drill the holes, then put it back and secure it together with some brads. Here's the finished wall sconce. I love the way it turned out. Now it's so light that you can install it directly on the wall with 3M command strips. But if you don't want to see the cord and the switch on the wall, you can install it on a wall panel like I did here. And to control the light, you can use a remote receiver and a wireless wall switch. Click here if you want to see how I built the wall panels. And now it's time to show you how to make the wood shade. To make the wood shade, you'll need the inside ring of an 8-inch embroidery hoop cut in half, and 1 package of 3/4 inch pre-glued white birch veneer edging. You'll need to cut 12 vertical strips that are 10 inches long and 10 horizontal strips that are 13 3/4 inch long. You'll also need long stem brads like these. Last, you'll need 2 pieces of plastic corner guards cut to 8 5/8 inch long with 1 hole drilled about 1/2 inch from each end. The first thing you'll need to do is to mark the location of the strips on the ring, evenly spacing them out about 1/4 inch apart. Place the wood side of one of the vertical strips on the hot iron until the glue melts. Then place it on the outside edge of the ring and repeat until all the vertical strips are glued. Weave and place 8 of the horizontal strips, going over and under the vertical strips, straightening along the way and leaving some extra length at the edges. If you need to reposition a strip, you can reheat the glue. It's hot, so be careful when you move it. Applying more heat may change the color of the wood, but in this case it's okay because we'll be covering this up later. Finish weaving the horizontal strips and straighten everything. Use a corner guard piece to mark the location of the second ring at both ends. Heat the glue and place one end of the ring, clamping it in place. Then glue the other end and check if the ring is straight using one of the corner guard pieces. Straighten the vertical strips once again and then glue the remaining strips in place. Then trimming off the excess length is easy using a utility knife. To finish the edge, clip a horizontal strip flush with the edge of the ring, leaving one end free. Since this is the finishing strip, I recommend putting a piece of white paper in between the iron and the wood to prevent it from changing color when applying heat. Start from the free end and glue the entire strip around the ring. To mark the location of the brads on the edge, I like to use painter's tape so that I can reuse it to mark the other side. You want the brads to be about 1/4 inch from the edge, 1 inch apart, starting 1/4 inch from the end. You may need to adjust the strips for everything to line up. Then you temporarily tape the corner guard to the shade, lined up with the end of the rings. Place it on a piece of scrap 2x1 or furring strip and drill the holes. It's an awkward setup for using clamps, so I just hold everything firmly in place while drilling. Before installing the corner guard, I put a piece of tape along the outside corner to prevent light from leaking on the sides. Attach the corner guards with brads, trim off the excess material along the side edges with a utility knife, and cover up the brad legs with tape. To put the shade together, slide the base into the shade and mark the location of the holes of the corner guards. You want to remove the base and drill the holes, then put it back and secure it together with some brads. Here's the finished wall sconce. I love the pattern in it, and what's great about the birch veneer is that you can stain it any color you want to match your decor. Now it's also really light, so you can install it directly on the wall using 3M command strips, but if you don't want to see the switch and the cord, you can also install it on a wall panel like I did here, and then you can control the light using a remote receiver and a wireless wall switch. It's perfect lighting for movie night. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and for a complete resource guide on this project, including tools, supplies, and materials that you need, click here. You can also check out my website, engineeryourspace.com, for more DIY tips and inspiration. And you can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. See you next time.